Good morning. I don't have hard copies to hand out this morning. Apparently the copier is on strike. It made a copy, but it was, yeah. Remember whenever the broadcast TV stations would go off the air? You'd either get the test pattern or basically just snow. Yeah, it sort of looked like the snow from that. So I'll try and get some copies made this afternoon down at Staples or Kinko's or whatever we got here in town. For anybody who wants it, just let me know who all wants them afterwards during our intermission period, so I know how many copies to make and leave in one of the boxes back by Michelle's door. Mike, could you open us up in prayer, please? Thank you. So this morning's lesson is living victorious in difficult times. And our verse is John 5:5. So John chapter 5, verse 5. That will be the one in the center that's underlined. To put it in context, I started at 1 and ran through verse 12. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. This is how we know that we love the children of God, by loving God and carrying out his commandments. In fact, this is love for God, to keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome. For everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world? Only the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. This is the one who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ. He did not come by water only, but by the water and blood. And it is the Spirit who testifies, because the Spirit is the truth. For there are three that testify: the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And the three are in agreement. We accept human testimony, but God's testimony is greater, because it is the testimony of God, which he has given about his Son. Whoever believes in the Son of God accepts this testimony. Whoever does not believe God has made him out to be a liar, because they have not believed the testimony of God has given about his Son. And this is the testimony. God has given us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son does not have life. So I'd like just to point out what is commonly put out there on TV and movie? That there's only one way to enlightenment, or there are many ways, according to the secular world. Yeah, they're all pointing towards many ways, right? Oh, you can get there by believing in Muhammad. You can get there by believing Buddha. You can get there by believing Confucius. That's not what the Bible says. So I just wanted to point that out as we move into the lesson. So what is the definition of victory? Victory is used several times in there. This is Webster's definition: an act of defeating an enemy or opponent in battle, game, or other competition, such as our Friday and Saturday game night, right? Synonyms: success, triumph, conquest, win. Favorable results: landslide, coup, mastery, superiority, supremacy. Informal walkover, thrashing, trousing. What other words might you use? Say again? Conquering. There, that's a good one. Conquering. Anybody else? Yeah, I saw that he had an interview. Just said he wouldn't be bullied by his liberal friends, and definitely not his music. But as an individual, the fact that he's willing to stand up and take the shots to the face and chest, simply because he refuses to condemn President Trump. Now, he'll be very vocal on things that he disagrees with President Trump on, such as not sanctions, what do we call them? The trade war that President Trump has engaged us in. I have concerns about trade wars as well, but if our trading partners are not being fair, that's really the only way to force them to be fair. And so, mixed feelings on that one. He's right, that is the only way to get him to the table. The idea of tariffs sort of bothers me. But if your trading partners aren't being fair, then you stop trading with them. Yeah, mixed results. What else would you put down for victory? Oh, yeah. That is quite true. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's not just blood or messed up lives, but it's also treasure in money and in materials, right? And the sharing of innovations, our intellectual property. Absolutely. The Willys Corporation developed the Jeep. How much money did they make off the Jeep? Almost nothing. It was farmed out to any company capable of actually manufacturing it. So the Willys Corporation isn't out there anymore, right? Yeah. The legacy's there, but how much financial gain did they get off of it? Almost none, right? Mm-hmm. Nevada and other locations. It was actually more than that. They were basically getting all the scientific data from the detonations at different ranges, and different depths in the ground, as well as in the atmosphere above, in order to develop. The United States has the best computer models for nuclear detonation, for fission and fusion, uranium, plutonium, and hydrogen weapon systems. And probably in short order, probably in the next presidential term, we'll probably start doing it again. Only this time, it will be antimatter devices. There's lakes in Nevada that still glow at night because the lakes were created after the detonation and all the earth caved in, and the radiation is leaking up through the lake, so the lake actually, no kidding, glows at night. I've talked to several people who have seen them. When I was in the Philippines, yes ma'am, in a moment. Yeah. Yes. When I was in the Philippines, some of the Filipino officers asked how the United States was able to do all this nighttime operation with helicopters and aircraft. I said, because we were willing to pay the price. He goes, oh, so it's expensive. I said, in more ways than you can realize. Yes, there's the R&D, but also watch the American news and see how often we lose aircraft at night, either around Fort Campbell as they're doing their air assault, or Fort Benning as they're doing airborne operations, or the Marines and Navy as they go out to ships at night and then get lost, or they crash trying to land on a helicopter or smaller ship, or land the helicopters on smaller ships in the middle of a storm. We have the capability of doing that because we're willing to train and risk the loss of personnel and equipment. So that there's another price for victory. You're right. So victory is not free. There's always a cost. So moving on. So your living example. So this is a living example of victory. I should have probably changed that. So I'm only going to use 4 verses today. John 5:5, John 13, Job 2, and then Hebrews 11. So we're going to go back to John 5:5 again. So I shortened it up a little bit. 1 John. Don't have a pen on me. Oh, that's 1 John, not John? Oh, my bad. So go back to verse 5. Who is it that overcomes the world? So this is the wrong verse as well? Oh, okay. Good. I was about to scrap everything right there. Like, oh, man. Okay. Who is it that overcomes the world? Only the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. Now, is believing, as we talked about last week, is believing enough? I believe Cody used the verse about the, well, good for you. Even the demons believe and shudder. But does it count as faith if you simply have faith that your parachute's going to work, but you're not willing to step out of the airplane? Or that your rope is going to secure you, but you're not willing to rappel off the cliff? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, faith is just the first. Or hearing is the first, and then faith is the second, that you actually believe. But what good is belief if you're not willing to take actions? And the apostles preached on that many times as well. They're going, if you believe, then there's going to be actions that follow. So John 13, 34 and 35. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. And so, if you say you love one another, it's one thing. You're going to have to take the next step. As you said, the old English definition of belief basically tied faith and action together, as they should be. As we said with the parachute or the rappelling rope, I keep using that examples because I'm terrified of heights, but I've gone rappelling many times. I always tied my rope off not to one tree, but to like 3. So I would say that's a qualified faith. I have quite a bit of faith in the rope, but I wasn't so sure about the trees that were anchored into very thin layer of dirt on top of solid rock. So I tied off to multiple trees. I had plenty of faith in gravity. A healthy fear, you might say. So that's why I keep using parachutes and rappelling ropes as an example of faith. You can say, yeah, I got faith that that parachute is going to work exactly as it's designed. Here, put one on and step out of the airplane. No. Not happening. What are examples that you have of tying faith and action? Excuse me. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Every time you get in the car. Is it faith in the car or faith in the other drivers that concern you? Both. You need a bigger car. Like with a snowplow on the front of it or something? Excuse me. Oh. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And that's what Christ was talking about here at the Last Supper, right after Judas left. Is you need to show each other love, and in such a way that everybody around you sees it. Absolutely. Like here, all the time, you'll see generally the first person that's done eating will go around and pick up plates of other people and throw them in the trash. Have you ever done that at a company or your work potluck? What is the reaction of everybody there whenever you do that? Here, for us, it's normal, right? What happens whenever you do it out in the secular world? Yeah, they're in shock. They're like, what do you want? What are you doing? It's pretty amusing to see, actually. What's that? That's when you hold up a mirror. Yes, you are. Anybody else have any other examples of faith in action? We might get done early today.
So let's go past driving and taking the way to Safeway and jumping out of an aircraft. Those that take the word to the other countries, that there may be civil wars, and the individuals believe that God will spare their life for them to be able to take the word.
I was reading the news this week. China is cracking down on Christians again. They're actually shutting down some of the state-sponsored churches where they had rewritten the Bible to be more in lines with the Communist Party. They're even shutting some of those down. And they're definitely cracking down on house churches. So if you were to go there and teach, how much risk are you assuming? Probably less as a foreigner than what the host nationals are.
And so, Wednesday night, we were supposed to spend time in Romans 6, 7, and 8. The chapter, we didn't get that far. But if we're dead to the flesh, why would we worry if someone's going to take our life because we're professing his name?
Yeah? Anybody else? So, like Mark said,
Yeah, to me, that's faith in action. It's taking, there's things that we do. Walking down the street, right, crossing a busy intersection, that may be daring, but faith in action is actually doing His will.
there's significant risk in North Korea. Yeah, significant risk in North Korea, significant risk in China. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can be executed for proselytizing in most of the Muslim countries because they follow Sharia, which is Islamic law. Myanmar. So in Job 2, verses 9 and 10, his wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin in what he had said. So we talked about be victorious even in difficult times. Was Job having a difficult time? Yeah, he had basically lost everything but his land. All his livestock, all his crops, his family. Several of the houses that were on his property, or at least one of the houses was destroyed, the one that his kids were in. How can we use that as an example of how we are to be? I'm sorry, a little bit louder, please. Oh, you're right. I left that out. Yeah. Yeah, head to toe boils. Yeah. And then rubbing wood ash into it. I mean, most of you realize that was actually a medicinal thing that he was doing, right, with the ash? Because what is soap made from? Lye, which is basically water run through wood ash, and then a lard or binding agent. That's what lye soap is made out of. There's basically fat, boiled down animal fat, and then water run through wood ash mixed together. So he was actually doing medicinal, but it's sort of the rough way to do it. Scrape it and then just, rub the wood ash in it. Anybody think of any other examples of that? Cody, you raising your hand? Oh, okay. Hi, Mitch.
Morning, Mitch.
So Hebrews 11, 1 through 13. Looks like I left off at 1. So I truncated a little bit. This is the what's called the Hall of Faith, or list of the faithful, depending on whose sermon you're looking at. Now, faith is confidence in what is hoped for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was made out of what was invisible. Looks like I truncated it. By faith, and here I truncated a bit. By faith, Abel. By faith, Enoch. By faith, Noah. By faith, Abraham. Talking about the stuff that they were told to do or promised, and they acted on it in faith that it was going to happen. Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Now, would God have come up with some other way to save the human race if Noah had not shown faith and began a 125-year process of building, stocking, and then putting the animals aboard the ark? He had 125 years to get the task done. So not just build the ark, he had to put all the food in it. All the separate containment areas for the different animals. God gave him the plan, so he didn't have to draw those up, but he still had to harvest the wood, cut the wood, peg or nail it together, whatever method he used. There's some arguing what the technology level was prior to the flood. We know what the technology was after the flood. Not much arguing on that. So what does this say to you whenever we take a look at the roll call of faith? Are they commended because they believed what God told them and then they sat on the couch? Right. Okay, you had climbed the mountain what? Okay. Okay. it didn't burn up. That was harder to explain. Well, in Israel, would be a little bit of peer pressure too. If you don't believe that the water's going to fall and kill us all, you better believe it, we're going to beat you up. Lazarus. Yeah, Lazarus. I mean, yeah, Jesus was right because even though Jesus rose from the dead, walked among them, he didn't come back from the dead by himself. He brought hundreds with him, and they walked around Jerusalem spreading the word as well. And then they all left on the clouds, and yet there's still people who not only don't believe in the resurrection, they don't believe Jesus ever existed. Tony?
So what we do have in common is you've got verse 13 and then following 14.
Yes.
As it goes on, now we know that we have received the same promise, but not in full, right? So all these people were living by faith. When they died, they did not receive the same promise, only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. That we have in common. Admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. Instead, they were looking for a better country. A heavenly.
Absolutely.
That we have in common.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Well, not just them. All the countries around them saw these, the pillar of fire, the pillar of smoke. Well, as Mitch was saying, by having the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, we have been given greater insight than what most people back in those days could possibly have had. So we have a better understanding of the framework. Absolutely. And so next I have some secular examples of living victorious in difficult times. This one is Winston Churchill. Whenever he weaponized the English language, he was surrounded by appeasers who wanted to surrender to Germany. And he stood up and called them out in Parliament, in the press, for which he was broiled by the press and all those who wanted to surrender or join with Germany in taking over the world. He gave this speech after Dunkirk. We shall fight them on the beaches, on the landing grounds, in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Was that popular when he wrote it, a couple hours prior to giving the speech? No, he was about to not only be thrown out as the prime minister, they were talking about arresting him for opposing them surrendering and saving what was left of the British Empire, surrendering to the Germans. And yet he moved forward victoriously. Revisionist historians tried to say, oh, well, England wasn't going to surrender anyway. No, it really was about to surrender until he got up and gave that speech and just basically totally humiliated everybody that was trying to surrender. So, living victoriously in difficult times. By taking this stance, he took a very unpopular stance. Looking back in history, we could see it was the right one. So that's a secular example. As is this one. Never ever give up. If the frog lets go of that stork's neck, what's going to happen to the frog? He's going to be lunch. If he can choke the stork out, he's got a chance, right? Live victoriously. Live by faith. So as I was laying in bed last night, I was thinking about this, and I go, yeah, that's what I need to add. I need to add the stork. And in the middle of the night, I also had this epiphany. I remembered this one. Back to Noah. You're going to fight. Fight like you're the third monkey in line for the Noah's Ark. And, brother, it's starting to rain. So not only must you be courageous, as we have the examples from the Bible and Winston Churchill and Abraham Lincoln and others, you can't just fight. You got to fight with everything you got. Whether you're the frog or whether you're the monkey. And as we're saying, there's a battle going on. Are you going to be the appeasers that are wanting to give up? Or are you going to be Churchill, the frog or the monkey, right? And the best way to fight, as with Winston Churchill, he was accused of weaponizing the English language by the ones that were defeated in that speech. And they're right, he did weaponize the English language. The only way, our language that we need to weaponize is the Bible. It is our sword and our shield. And remember, we can do all things through him who strengthens us. Thank you. We'll have a brief intermission.